Alright, we are starting. We are doing our warm up. Find the product. We are on lesson. We're on day 6. So it's really not lesson 9.5. We're on day 6. We're going to spend one day doing basic factoring practice. Kind of like what we were doing yesterday. A little bit different to it. I don't think it'll be too difficult as long as we're paying attention. I think you guys will catch on very quick. So let's do these and get through them. So first, find the product. You could use any method you want on doing these. If you're using the box method, that's fine. If you're foiling or if you're just grouping. Me personally, I leave them like this, and I do x times x is x squared. X times -4 is -4x. Then I do 6 times x is 6x. 6 times -4 is -24. And then we combine like terms. -4x plus 6x is 2x. And that should have been our final answer. Number 2, anyone have enough courage? What did we get? Tatum, what did you get?
2y squared plus 13y plus 15.
2y squared plus, what did you say?
13y.
13y
Plus 15.
That's correct. If you're looking, 2y squared, we would have had 3y and we would have had 10y. So 10y plus 3y is 13y. And then 3 times 5 is 15. Alright. The dimensions of a rectangular print. So anytime I have anything like this, I go ahead and draw it real quick. They are represented by x minus 2 and 2x plus 1. Write an expression that models the area of the print. Well, we know area is length times width. So we would have done 2x minus 1, plus 1, times x minus 2. And we just distribute that. I have 2x squared minus 4x plus x minus 2. Combine my like terms, so I have 2x squared. -4x plus x is -3x minus 2. So that's the first part. They asked us for an expression. Then they said if x is 4 inches. So all we're doing is substituting 4 in for x. You would solve it. I'd have 4 squared is 16 times 2 is 32. 3 times 4, we'd have -12 minus 2. We just break it down. 20 minus 2. So we would get 18 inches squared. No. Ron, get your notes out so you can be doing this with us, bud. Alright, let's refer to our foldable. And it's a good question. Where mine went? Alright, foldables out, please. And well, that's great. I don't know where mine went. Is that? Alright, guys, our side conversations are going to have to kind of stop so we can get through today's. Alright, it says factor x squared plus bx plus c. Alright, so here's something we're having to learn. With our quadratic formulas, we have to learn that they use something A, B, and C. A, even though we're not talking about that yet, A is always going to be the first term that comes before your x squared in your quadratic formula. A is going to come before the x squared, B is the middle term, and then C is your last one. What we are going to look at here is B. And we'll go right here in our example. So, x squared plus bx plus c. B is the sum or the difference. Gentlemen, I'm stopping for about a third time. I don't think that you want me just to give you your homework assignment. B, our middle term, we find that middle term in our quadratic formula because it's the sum of difference between two of our multiplying that we'll see down here. But we're going to remember, B is the sum or difference. C is going to be our product. We get that when we multiply. If I look down here, it's C is our multiplying our last two terms. B came when I did the 9x and the 2x, and we add them together. There's a reason this is going to be very important to us. When we look at this, we're going to pretend this bottom part isn't here, and we just had the formula x squared plus 11x plus 18, and we need to find the factors of 18 that can combine to equal 11. Mainly, when we're going to solve this one, and we're going to make it into two equations, there's a couple steps we're going to do first. The first thing that we are going to look at is, in front of the C, it's a positive 18. Now, to get to that C term, we said it's multiplication. So if I have a positive number, if we follow these steps each time, it's going to help us. If I have two numbers, how do I get a positive? What do their values have to be? Okay, so they can both be positive and positive, or negative and negative. We then look at our B term. If B is a positive number, would my two terms be positives or negatives? They'd have to be positives, right? So that's how I'm going to be able to kind of cheat ahead and say, okay, this was x squared. I'm going to know in my 2, I'm going to just have an x and an x. And because you told me it has to be a positive, because this ended up being positive as well, I can go ahead and say plus and plus. Now, the way we find out what the other two numbers are is we look at 18 and we have to find the factors of 18. To be honest, some of us are going to be able to do this pretty quick because we're really good with our facts. But it is best if you do this if need be. I'm just going to list out the factors of 18 quick. So 1 to 18, 2 to 9, 3 to 6, 4, 5, 6. So that's all. What I always do then is, since these are adding, I'm going to say, okay, which two, since I'm adding, can I add and get 11? 1 plus 18 is 19. 2 plus 9 is... So that tells me I would be using these two numbers. I would put in 2 and I'd put in 9. And this is my final answer. When we took our quadratic formula and we broke it down, we got it to x plus 2 times x plus 9. It does not matter if you switch to 2 around. You could say x plus 9 and x plus 2. If you ever question whether you got it right, go ahead and just multiply. X times x is x squared. That's our 9x. 2x. 18. Combine like terms, we'd have x squared plus 11x plus 18. You get back to your original equation, which means you did it correct. There are going to be a few times where we choose a number and it's not going to work because we're not really thinking it through. We just visually see something. You'll see here in a second. When we scroll down, this is for people that are pretty good with these numbers and they like reading it this way. We're not going to spend hardly any time on this. But it's kind of telling you when B and C is positive and positive, what the signs have to be in different situations. Some people's brains work that way. They love seeing that. You read through that and you totally get that. That's fantastic. Otherwise, I'm just going to show you the method that works very easily. So we're going to skip over that. Here's what we're going to do. Factors. X squared plus 10x plus 24. The way we're going to do this is, first thing is I notice up here I have x squared. Okay? So that tells me I'm going to have x and x. Because x times x is x squared. I break that one down first. Then, it's a positive 24. So my two numbers have to be either positive positive or negative negative. We look at our b term, and because it was positive, we know we will be using positive numbers. So I'm going to put in plus and plus. And then this is your next step. We look at c, and because it's multiplied, we find the factors of 24. I have 1 and 24, 2 to 12, 3 to 8, 4 to 6, 5 dozen, 6 we've already had. So those are all our factors. I'd make this out. I would do this every single time, just make sure I don't mess up. Now my question is, because we're adding, I'm going to add here. Which one of my terms would add together to give me b, which was 10? So we see the 4 to 6 will give me 10. So I'm going to add 4, add 6. And that is our answer. It's not a lot of steps, and we're going to get a couple more difficult ones. But for right now, first thing we're doing, I've seen that my a term, the x squared, I broke into x and x. Then I'm looking, is it a positive c or a negative c? It will affect what we're doing. So let's look at this one, because there's something happening on this. So we have y squared minus 11y plus 18. So when I look at it, I'm going to first say, okay, it's y squared. So I'm going to write y and y. Our c is a positive 18. So it's either add positive positive or negative negative. But this time we look at our b, we have a negative b. So are my numbers going to be positive or negatives? Have to be negatives. So I'm going to go ahead and throw the negative sign. Now, because of this, we're going to have to make sure that we're thinking the right thing when we find our factors. So 18, 1 to 18, 2 to 9, 3 to 6. I think that's it. Now, is this going to matter which one we put in? Probably not, since we have negative negative. But this is the one where I'm going to be subtracting, and I have to get to negative 11. So if I did negative 1 minus 18, that'd give me negative 19. Negative 2 minus negative 9 would give me. So I would think that's going to be the right one. Negative 3 minus 6 is going to be negative 9. So that's how I know it's going to be my 2 and my 9. Okay, before we move on, questions on this. How are we doing with this part? Any confusion why we got 2 9? It's very important that we do say y minus 2, y minus 9. If you tried anything else, it's not going to come out right. Remember, you can always double check yourself. To be honest, I should never see you miss this on test because you can go ahead and factor this then and you should get back to your original answer. Okay, last one I'm going to do with you and then I'm going to have you guys do some by yourself. And this one I want to do with you because it's different. First thing, I see that x squared is still just x squared. So I'm going to go with x and x. However, this time we have a negative 40. So how do I get a negative when I multiply? So we have to have a positive and a negative or a negative and a positive. So I'm going to just put positive first and negative second. But this time, is it going to matter which order I put my numbers? It will. Yeah. Because I'm going to have a positive. It depends if that's the bigger one or smaller one. And I'll show you my little trick how I figured it out. This one is a negative. Since b is a negative, my hint to you, when we find our factors, the larger number of the two is going to be the negative one. And the reasoning is b is negative. So if we look at this and we ever have our c being a negative, meaning we're going to have different signs, you have to choose which one goes to which. Just think, if b is negative, the bigger number will be negative. We list the factors of 40. 1 to 40, 2 to 20, 3 doesn't, 4 to 10, 5 to 8, 6 doesn't, 7 doesn't, 8 we already have. Now, I like this one. To me, this one's easier because what I always think about is since I have opposite signs, I always look for just the absolute value. What's the absolute value between the two numbers? Between 1 and 40, it's 39. Between 2 and 20, it's 18. 4 to 10, it's 6. 5 to 8, it is 3. I'm saying absolute value. I'm just subtracting the two numbers and saying how far apart are they. And when I find those, like this one was 39. That one was 18. 6. 3. And I'm saying I need to find the one that is 6, which is obviously our 4 and 10. But once again, this is why it's important that we put this in the correct order. Since it's negative 6, I want my 10 to be the negative number. If I flip these around, if I would have said the other way, like we'll go ahead and solve this one quick. This would have been x squared plus 4x minus 10x minus 40. We would have still had x squared. Combine the two. Positive 4 minus 10 is negative 6x. That's where we would have got the correct answer. Had we switched these around, we would have had x squared minus 4x plus 10x minus 40. So far, everything's looking okay. But negative 4 plus 10 would have given us positive 6x. And that does not match our equation. So, whenever we have c being a negative, pay close attention to what is happening to b. If it's a positive number, make your larger factor positive. If it's negative, make your larger factor the negative. Go ahead and try this next one all by yourself. We'll go ahead and do it in just a second. Alright. So pay attention to this because I am seeing a number of mistakes. And the main mistake is the one I'm seeing. So follow up here real quick. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my a term, which is the m squared. And since it's m squared, I'm just going to say there's an m in both. Alright, we're okay up to that point, correct?
Yeah.
That part's easy. Okay, the next thing we always look is our c term. And is it a positive or negative? It's a negative, which means what to me? Okay, because it's a negative, when I multiply two numbers, the only way to get a negative number between two numbers multiplying is if one's a positive, one's a negative. So I'm going to go in my equation right away and say positive, negative. Okay, up to this point, I don't care about anything else. Are we okay up to this point?
Yes.
Okay, the next step I would honestly do is I would list my factors for 6, because this is where I'm seeing a mistake. I mean, people are listing their factors correct, but we're doing this. 1 to 6, 2 to 3, and I don't have to say anything else. Now, deciding which numbers to use. I'm seeing a lot of people choosing 2, 3, because 2 plus 3 gives us our middle number 5, correct? However, because this is a 5 in the middle, we do have to get them to be 5. But the biggest thing was right here. When this one is a negative, when your C is a negative, when you're comparing your factors, think in your head, I will be subtracting my 2. I'm going to subtract my factors. So when my C is a negative number, I will subtract my factors to find their absolute value. So if I did 2 and 3, which is what I've seen a lot of people do, they put 2 and 3 in. If we did this and we distributed, we'd have m squared plus 2m. Let's see. Oops, I should have said m squared minus 3m plus 2m minus 6. However, when we do this middle part, negative 3m plus 2m is only negative m. But that's not what we were going for. And the reason that does not work is because we are supposed to be subtracting. So, once again, everything's the same except when I have a negative C, I should look at my factors and say, I'm going to subtract them. I need to find the absolute value of the distance between the two. Between 2 and 3, the distance was 1, which we saw is what we would have got our answer. Between 6 and 1, it would have been 5. That tells me I have to use the factors 1 and 6. Now, my only question is, which one's positive, which one's negative? And that's where I said, if you look back at your B, because B is a positive number, between 1 and 6, your bigger factor should be your positive. So, because 6 is bigger than 1, I will make 6 my positive factor. I will make 1 my negative factor. That way, when we distribute it through, we would have had m squared plus 6m minus m minus 6. And right there is where I have a positive 6m minus an m, which would leave us just with 5m. n. Okay? So, before I move you guys on to this next one, check your C. Actually, we always check A first, since it's just 1. That's what it says in your notebooks. That's why it says x squared plus bx plus c. A term equals 1. Right now, our A term's only 1. We will have it where it becomes more than 1. Right now, it's just 1. So m, n. You look at your C. If it's a negative, we're going to multiply a positive and negative. Go ahead and write that in. But that tells me when I find my factors, you will find the absolute value in between them, not adding them, finding the absolute value. Okay, I'm going to give you just a couple minutes to work on this one. There's a trick to this one. This one, I'm going to go ahead and preview it, see if anyone can find the trick. So it's p squared plus 4p plus 45. I'll do part of it, but I want you guys to identify what's wrong.
Wow, you must have watched all the shows.
That's why I didn't say it's positive, S is positive, positive, or negative. Because B is positive, or B is positives. So I know right away, because of this.
But does it matter which order they go in?
No. But what happens when you use your number? Okay, couple people have got this. Honestly, like I said, if you're paying close attention to today's, this becomes fairly easy. All my steps that I did. First thing I did, my A term was just 1, so it's p squared, so I did p and p. Then I looked at my C. Because it's a positive, I would write this down almost every time. Because it was a positive number, it means I'm going to multiply either a positive, positive, negative, negative. I decide which one because then I look at my B term. Because B was positive means I have to have 2 positive terms. So I went into my equation and said positive, positive. Because C is positive, I'm going to say right here, when I list my factors, I'm going to look to add the 2. Well, those are all the factors of 45. What was the problem we ran into? None of them equal 4. None of them. 5 and 9 is what some people want to use because the absolute value was 4. And so they were trying to say plus 5 minus 9 or plus 9 minus 5. But then that wouldn't give us our positive 45. When this happens and we cannot factor it, we call this prime. If you cannot factor something, you will call it prime. I'm pretty sure on today's homework there's like 3 of them.
What? Is that just like an answer? Oh, that's how they
So 4 plus 6 on this one is 5 plus 9, 4.
Somehow don't get
So that's 1. Alright. I think we have 2 left, so I'm going to skip this one for a reason. Oh no, I can do this one, it's the same. Okay, I want to look at this one. Because there's 2 of these and I want to make sure we hit this before the end of class. So we have about 4 minutes, so pay close attention. First thing is my A term is still just 1, x squared. So I know I can say x and x. What is different in this equation? We have 2 variables. But here's what I can see. Because this one is y squared, all that means is my second term is going to have a y in it. So my first term is going to be x, and then my second term is going to have a y in it. Now, I'm going to still follow all the same rules we've been doing. C was a positive number, which means I'm multiplying either positive positive or negative negative. When I look at my B term was negative. So that tells me I will be subtracting. Well, you'll see. Which part are you confused with?
Why is it negative?
Because a negative times a negative is a positive, right? And because my B term is a negative, if these were positive, I can't ever add a positive and a positive number and get a negative number. I can't ever say 5 plus 7 is negative anything. I can't ever add 2 positives and get a negative. And B term is always got by adding. So these have to be a negative. Now what I'm going to do is the same process we did before. Find the factors of 15. 1, 15, 3, and 5. And because we have chosen to be subtracting, I have to look which 2, when I combine the 2, will give me 8. 5 and 3 will give me 8. Does it matter which order I put them in? No, because both my signs are negatives. If both my signs are positive, it didn't matter. If they're both negative, it doesn't matter. The only time it changes is if this one is a negative. So I would say negative 3 and negative 5. Okay, honestly, if you do these steps every single time, this is fairly easy. Our A term is always going to be broken up because we're using just one term right now. Look at your C term. If it's positive, you're either going to multiply 2 positives or subtract negative negative. Once we decide, I look here. Since B was a negative, it means my 2 signs were negatives. We then went ahead and listed the factors for 15. And we have to find which ones would give me 8. Okay, your homework.
Can we like do one? Yeah, how about we do each?
This sucks.
Please.
No, this won't take time.
45!
Oh my God.
Can we take off 10? Can we take off 10?
If the polynomial is not factorable, you must write prime.
Yeah, can we take off 10?